Carefully written plans may seem suddenly irrelevant when we are confronted with unexpectedly extreme fire behavior. But before we toss it away, should we consider our plan as an opportunity to learn a new step in executing it? Listen to Brett Fay's experience with a fast-moving wildland fire use event that even in the face of unexpected fire behavior, he found value in its components and application. Brett Fay began his fire career as an engine crew member in southern Utah. He's worked as a technician and in professional fire management for nearly 25 years in positions spanning fire behavior, prescribed fire, and wildland fire use.
I do a lot of flying, and I think about a couple of things when I get these ignitions going. One is, what kind of fuel environment are we in? Are the fuels green? Are they wet? Well, these fuels are set up on a wetting trend into a monsoonal pattern. Okay. The second thing, when I get able to put my eyeballs on it, is I look at the terrain on how it lays on the landscape. This fire was at the edge of the Great Basin, which is very exposed to the winds coming off the desert. So these are two significant factors that I think about initially. I combine those to think about the rates of spread. How fast is this fire going to move? And then for the terrain and wind direction, I think of which way is it going to move? And that's what sets up that vision or the sideboards of what I think the highest risk probability is for a given area. We got the ignition at about 1800 in the evening. We were assessing it from 1800 to 2000 and made decision about 2300. So during that time, I had a map. I was pulling up some weather stations at home. This is all, I got our coordinates and looking at it. But I know that terrain pretty well, and I was going to fly it the next morning during light. So once I got over the fire and could see the fire behavior, that it was a lot drier than what our live fuel moisture collection was telling us, that the fire was moving a lot more quickly. I think we all know that, fires do things that we don't expect. What I expect from my plans is that they give me a general context on what we can normally expect. And I also expect that they give me some things that I care about out there that I want to protect. So from that point that, generally this is what fire behavior is in this portion of the forest or this portion of the country. These are the things I specifically care about and why, and also what I want to accomplish with these fires. So that's what I expect out of a plan. Once I get into an ignition, I pull the plan off the shelf and say, okay, what do I care about? What do I want to achieve? And what can I generally expect from the fire to do? At that point, to me, it's a foundation that I work from. And then everything from there can be adapted and evolve, and it most of the time does. Sometimes it evolves in a way, in a less benign or less exciting way, and sometimes it goes the other way. The plan for the decision, say we get an ignition this afternoon. First, we find out where it is. Second, we find out what's the objective that we want to accomplish, if we have one, for fire to do stuff. Third is, what can we expect from a given fire this time of year based on our plan, okay? And then fourth, where are the things that we care about that we don't necessarily want fire to impact? That's what I expect this plan to do. So once at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, I pull up the plan on the computer. For this, it was the fire management unit description. And I say, okay, we care about, there's a campground here. We care about the reservoir. We care about, this goshawk habitat or whatever it might be. I can look at my fire season there and I can tell, which is charted out to tell me, where am I within the fire season? Can I expect this to be a long duration fire, many weeks, many months, or is it going to be a short duration fire based on history? Are my indices going up, or are they going down? So I expect better or more complex fire behavior, or should it be, more benign? That's what I expect out of a plan, to give me some sort of context for the fire. So that's what I looked at before we got on the phone, and it brought up some things. We were very close to a BLM land, or the forest boundary for BLM land. What's their objectives? Do they have similar objectives? Can they allow fires to burn on the BLM? Yes or no? If they can't, then that's it's a significant decision point within that. I've heard people talk here recently about dancing. We don't fight fire; we dance with the fires, and in a lot of ways that is it. You're anticipating in a probabilistic manner on what the fire is going to do, and then what you're going to do when the fire might do these actions based on what you want to accomplish. So, and your probability on where the fire is going to go and what it's going to do is constantly changing, and you need to constantly update how you're going to manage for that. And the dance is to be able to, broaden out your management organization enough so that they can be flexible in how they implement things. But don't, and I've seen this happen a couple of times this last summer, you don't lose that focus of how that organization is being directed. Because sometimes what will happen is you're bringing in an organization like a team, they become a separate entity, and they don't maintain the overall objectives from the unit. So in essence, you lose the flexibility based on the objective of the unit because the team gets locked into their objective. The key element is be able to have the pieces to be able to adapt to the conditions. And, and that's probably, if I was going to look at it, that's the most fun portion of me. And I know some other folks I count on too. The fun portion is to have those pieces there when you need them, and not too much, but just enough, and having the right people in the right positions to have the communication working too. So that information to know what's going on by people you trust, and then being able to react with the tools you need to be able to manage the situation. And it's not just crews and helicopters, it's analytical folks, it's people dealing with information. It's a lot of different things on those tools to be able to put them in place.
Brett Fay uses the metaphor of dancing to describe the process of being extremely adaptable and flexible after a wildland fire use event is implemented. In their book, Managing the Unexpected, Resilient Performance in the Age of Uncertainty, Wyke and Sutcliffe write that life in high-reliability organizations is a constant diet of interruptions and recoveries, where interruption is compared to stretching and recovery is likened to bouncing back from the stretch. So to dance well with a fire, as Fay advises, is to stretch when you've been interrupted and to bounce back after you've been stretched. Wyke and Sutcliffe suggest that you can improve your dance with a fire by welcoming a bad day, for it uncovers new details that help enlarge capabilities, practicing routines with your crews that accelerate feedback, learning to become comfortable with ambiguity, admitting that you haven't seen it all, for dealing with the unexpected is always a balancing act between your experience and what you haven't seen before.